Welcome to the Michigan Tribe podcast, where we are sharing for quite possibly the first time how Michigan Tribe came to be, how Alex and I not only started the organization, but the cult story that made it all possible. Let's dive in.
3, 2, 1, talk to me.
All right, we're going to dive right in because one of the things that my tribers
Here all the time.
always ask about is when we reference that you were in a cult, and they're always asking, like, what does that mean? Is it true? And can you tell me the story? We've never told the story, really, have we? I don't think we have at all.
0% chance I've told this story.
Yeah.
Because the trauma you've put me in the last month to remember this story definitely
She's done
identifies
a lot
I
of
have some
therapy.
things to get through.
A lot of therapy. And so we're going to talk about it today.
Yes.
We're going to talk about it in depth, and kind of how that brought us onto Michigan Tribe.
To Michigan Tribe.
Yeah.
And I also want to note that although the organization is still in existence, we're not going to use its real name for many different reasons, but we are going to refer to the organization throughout today's podcast as Heart to Heart Coaching or Heart to Heart Institute. Those are kind of interchangeable, but the Heart to Heart thing is something that we're going to call it just to make sure to protect ourselves and protect the other people in it.
Yeah. So you ready to dive in?
No, but okay. Okay.
Therapy, let's go. Okay. All right. So we're going to take you guys all the way back to 2011.
Yeah.
And this is kind of when this journey for my sis started, because you left like a really stable career that you had after college.
Mm-hmm.
Side note, Amanda she was never really career oriented. She was more entrepreneurship oriented at that time. And so the fact that you had
not even entrepreneurship
the fact
oriented.
that you had
I was
like
very much like live your best life and surf.
but the fact that you actually got a 9-to-5 job after college, blows my mind right
They
now.
recruited me hard. I don't know if you remember that, but they recruited me really hard. And I was like, meh. I thought about not going to it. I was like, maybe I won't start. I don't know.
And then you were like, I quit. Bye. So
That's exactly how that went,
because
actually.
I moved back in 2010 to Michigan from South Carolina. And then you decided you're going to just fill up your entire car, which at that time was a tiny car.
I'm going to pack 3 boxes. Guess what was in those boxes? Box number 1 had clothes. Box number 2 had pots and pans. Why of 3 boxes is that what I'm going to take? Box number 3 had pictures, like a very heavy box of pictures that I felt it absolutely essential to take across the country with me. That's what I took with me.
Okay, so minimal items.
Yes.
Including pots and pans. Okay.
Including pots and pans.
All right, so 2011, you get in your car, you drive across the country to Texas.
So I decided to jump in my car and aimlessly drive. I had no idea where I was going, and I just knew that the life of the 9-to-5, or in that time, I've always worked in nonprofits, and I studied to work in nonprofits when I was in college. And so it's not really a 9-to-5. And even for entrepreneurs, it's not a 9-to-5, right? I just knew that wasn't for me, and I wanted to escape it. And I was young enough and dumb enough and just ready to kind of see what was next. So I jumped into the car and aimlessly started driving. Like, I didn't have a path I was going. Right. I remember I ended up some real back roads in Missouri, and dirt roads, just like think I might die / end at a dead end and don't know where I'm going kind of things, and just
Mom's
started
worst
wandering. And Dad's worst nightmare. Let's be real. Mom was like, "Here's a monkey, take pictures and send it to me," and then I ran out of money in Texas. That's why I stopped in Texas.
Yeah, and so then you became a nanny, but that didn't work out, and then you ended up in Arizona.
So while I was a nanny in Texas, I knew that I wanted to do something that helped kids. I'd always been passionate about kids. And I randomly, while I was a nanny in Texas, got an email from someone who signed her name off as parent coach. Like, it might have been like a blog I was reading that I had subscribed to or something like that. And then they had a guest, blogger or something. And so that's how I was introduced to it. And I looked up that term, parent coach. And so I was familiar with the term Parent Coach Institute, which is still a school or still a certification that you can get through Washington State University.
Okay.
I was familiar with that when I moved to Arizona. And I had already started really Like, I don't remember if I invested right before I moved to Arizona but I knew that's what I wanted to go to school for. And that particular that particular school is where I really learned to coach.
Okay.
So I want to like be very specific with people because we are talking today about a life coaching cult that I was in.
Yep.
You know, it was a cult disguised as life coaching. Coaching is a very real thing that I believe in. I just don't believe that there are millions of good coaches out there like the numbers indicate based on that industry. Coaching is very real. It's something that, you know, Harvard Business School has a coaching arm. There are great coaches out there in the world. They're few and far between, and it's not like this bright, shiny industry that's super fun to be a part of and make a load of money on. That's just not what coaching is. And so Parent Coaching Institute, it played a big part in my story in that I spent a year learning how to coach people. I don't think I would have made it as far as I did in the cult that we're, you know, about to dive into had I not had that year of actual coaching experience. So yeah, when I was moving to Arizona, somewhere in there, I invested in the Parent Coaching Institute and learned how to coach really well through that school while I started a new life with my partner at that time in Arizona.
Yeah. And so now we're getting into 2012.
Somewhere in there. Yeah, sure.
2012, 2013. And this is
2020. I don't know. Let's be real.
This is where you discover the heart-to-heart coaching. Yeah. And so tell me about that.
So I went.
How did you find it?
At Parent Coaching Institute, I knew pretty immediately that parent coaching wasn't what I wanted to do, or at least that it wasn't my strong suit. So at Parent Coaching Institute, we had to actually coach, do observation hours. We had to get a lot of hours of practice. And during my hours of practice, I found it very natural and ended up really more life coaching the people I was practicing with. And that was the response I got, that it really didn't lean towards the parent coaching that I was studying. It leaned more towards life coaching. So I had started looking into life coaching schools. I was already interested in it. And I went to a documentary screening at like this small, I don't know if we ever went to this theater when I lived in Scottsdale. It was like this tiny little theater right next to where we lived, right in Old Town.
Okay.
And I went to a documentary screening, and the leader of Heart to Heart Coaching was one of the people in that documentary that was speaking. So it was all about like law of attraction and manifestation and having control of your life and visioning processes and stuff like that. That's what the documentary was about. And I resonated with that leader a ton. I mean, she just like spoke to me. There was something about her.
Yeah, tell me more about that, Amanda, because you and I have not had a conversation about this and what was it that or what was it that pulled you in? Because we really haven't talked about that.
I think there's a certain spark to cult leaders that everybody could resonate with if you've been in a cult. I don't know how to define it unless you're in it, other than to say there's something that just appeals to you. They have a certain charisma. You resonate with the way they talk. It's almost like they walk around with a bright, shiny light that you're just like, whoa, I'm attracted to, like, whatever they've got, I need to follow that. Like, there was an attraction to what she was saying. There was a light to what she was saying. Every word out of her mouth, it just felt so true to me. And it was what I was looking for. You know, I was looking for control over my life. I didn't want to go back to a 9 to 5. Yeah. I also didn't want to struggle as a nanny forever. And so I really resonated with what she said. And there was just some aura about her that there was just something inside of me that said, this one is right. This one's right. So I looked her up, and I invested before I met anyone, you know, I had an early sales call with them, but before I was done at the Parent Coaching Institute, I invested in their Heart to Heart Coaching Step 1 course that was going to be 3 to 6 months long, that I was going to start the moment I ended my other certification. And that was the path for me. I was ready.
How much was that?
I can't remember if it was $3,000 or $5,000, but it was in that range.
Okay.
And it was like a 3 to 6 month course where it was framed as that you were going to learn how to coach. But again, I didn't really need that. I just came out of a coaching school where I learned how to coach. So when I got into the course and realized it was very sales and marketing focused, like you were given scripts of like, this is how you sell, this is the process you follow, this is what you say to people, this is what you charge, this is what you coach. They give you everything you need to quote unquote start making money like the moment you invest. So it was sold to me as a coaching school, but that 3 to 6 months that I was investing in was more like sales and marketing, check-in calls and like scripts and things like that. I don't think I recognized that discrepancy because I had come from a great coaching school and I'd learned all those
you're
things.
so young too.
Oh yeah. I wanted to start the business. I was just like ready to do that.
We're in our 20s. We're in our like early mid 20s at this point. Okay.
And everything is wide open and possible.
So tell me, because I get invited by you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't wait to talk about this. I get invited by you to come out to California.
You do. I moved to California.
Yes,
that weekend.
you
Do you
did.
remember?
You also moved from Arizona to California.
Living in Arizona,
time.
I got engaged, and my partner at that time had a random dream. Like literally came home one night and was like, "I don't want to be an actor," and I was like, "Sounds great. Let's move to LA." And at the same time, I'm doing this coaching thing that's all about manifestation and life is possible, and you can do anything you put your mind to. So of course, I'm like applying that to everything he's saying and going, "Let's run off and do that." And so we moved to California at the same time, the very same weekend that a heart-to-heart live event is going on. And I make you come with
and
me.
You're like, Alex.
Yeah. And
get
you
your
flew
butt out
in.
here. And I did.
So first of all,
we flew out there.
You flew out there. You landed. It's like between you and Mark, your husband, you landed, walked out the doors of the LA airport. And immediately your big city sass starts. A taxi driver honked.
Yep.
Yelled at me. Lost your minds.
Yes, because he was yelling at us about getting out of the way, and I literally round kicked his face.
Yeah, and I was like, Alex belongs in LA more than I do.
Like, you were like, I was like, ain't nobody gonna tell me what to do. Like, country folk
you guys
up in
were
here.
crazy. Yeah, and then we went to my empty penthouse suite, and
because you had just moved.
Yeah.
So what year was that? Was that 2012 or was that 2013?
I think that was 2013, early 2013 when I moved.
So 2013, you invite me to this heart-to-heart live that we're doing. You and I get to the hotel.
Yes. Where the conference is.
And we walk into this, and there are, how many people would you say came to that?
I don't know. Less than 500, but a large number.
Yes, a large number, hundreds. And we walk in, we sit down in our seats that are set up.
No. There's like music blaring.
Wait. There was nothing because we were a little early. So we get in there, we sit down in like the stadium style seating, that you do for like presentations. And they start announcing and the music starts pumping. And all of these people get up. And it's like 8, 9 in the morning.
I think this is like Cult 101. You have to have dance parties with hundreds of people at events.
I was shocked. I was shocked by how much energy. And you and I looked at each other and we're like, that ain't us.
That ain't us.
That ain't us. We're not doing this, okay? We get to the end of the conference. It's us.
It's us. It was 100% us. We were all the way in. We didn't have to get to the end of the conference.
Yeah,
I think we got before lunch.
Yes.
We were like
vibing.
Hyped.
We were hyped.
Yeah.
We were hyped.
Yeah, that's
so
what they do.
Do you want to say anything about that conference? I mean, I remember certain aspects of that conference.
I would like the people to know about your experience of going to the restroom and how it impacted us, because I think it really represents, even though it's funny. So, what makes this a cult? Because I joke about this at Michigan Tribe meetings, but I have done a lot of reflecting on the indoctrination process of how it gets to the point where we're going to end the story, right? Which is like me in hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt to the organization, appearing externally to the world as very successful as one of their cult leaders, and internally being in a very real dark place because I have no control over my life and I'm, at their mercy basically. But it doesn't start like that. Like, I didn't know that I was getting into a cult. I knew that I was investing in a life coaching school that was going to teach me how to, start this business that I felt passionate about. And then we went to this room, and in that room is where we're first introduced to the common language that, I've listened to a ton of people's stories about being in coaching cults or MLM cults, and they say similar things. Like, you're introduced to a common language that if someone just comes to that conference, there's no harm in it. There's no harm in knowing that there's such a thing as vibrations or that law of attraction exists.
And I will say, it's one of the most positive experiences of my life.
Yeah.
And I've told you this many, many times.
We
Which I'll
learned
get
the
to my
question.
bathroom. I'll get to my bathroom story as to why, but agreed. Yeah.
It's the question that still to this day
we
impacts
use.
Michigan Tribe.
Yes,
I mean, it is definitely a positive experience. There are people who come to that singular event for a day or a weekend, and there's no harm done to their life. But I took it past that moment, like you didn't, or you did a little bit because you invested in the coaching service with me. But there are people who come to that event and it has a positive impact on their life and nothing else happens. But that event is where the language is introduced, where they kind of have these conversations about how we speak in this room, how we hug in this room, how we get to know people in this room, what energy level we bring to this room. And it's this bubble that's created that in one weekend is harmless because it's just what's in this room. But eventually, that becomes harmful in many ways. But that was a part of the indoctrination. They bring you there to heighten your energy, bring you so much joy. They call it love bombing when they're doing it directly to you. But it's also like positivity bombing when you're in this space where you feel so good you don't want to leave. And then, there are things that come after, but that's a part of the indoctrination process because they can relate to that and say, but don't you love being here? Don't you love being with us? Isn't that different from the rest of the world? And therefore, we're the thing you want to choose and we're the positivity in your world. And so, at that time, I didn't know all that by any means, but it was a very positive experience for me. For me, it reiterated I was in the right place. Like, this is where I belong and what I want to do. And it was very lined up with with the mindset I had about the world at that time. And they spoke all the things I needed to hear, that life was possible to do differently. Dreams were possible when I'm engaged to a person who just went overnight from being a salesman to an actor and wants to be on the big screen tomorrow. Right? Like, it spoke just a lot of what felt like truth in my life. So that event was very positive for me.
Very positive. I mean, I can remember many aspects of that conference. Learning about vibration, learning about energy, learning about positive affirmations, learning about how not to talk negatively so that you're not dragging yourself down, and how to level up your vibration when you want to dream a certain way, right? Yeah. And so I was sitting in this conference, and they do lots of different things. They do plays. They bring people up on stage. They talk to them about their dreams, and then they have you dream with a partner. And then
that's where you're introduced to the concept of speak as if it's 3 years from now, which became very toxic in the cult over time. But that was where we learned that.
But I will say a couple things about this. I'm going to tell the bathroom story, but one of the things that particular event happened with. I want to talk about the positivity of it before we get way into the negative, because I think there is things that we both took from it that we still use today. And, that is where I started dreaming about being a photographer part-time. That's when that started to be drummed up for me. So I can say it did work for me as far as thinking about it into the future. But
absolutely,
what I did was I would say that before I went to this conference, I really didn't think about things intentionally.
Yeah.
And so one of the things was like that they like really infused in you is like, you can do anything if you put your mind to it. And if you don't think you can do it, wait 3 days and then
you hit pause. You wait 3 days. If nothing happens or changes, then you can worry about it. Then you can think about it. Then you can give it negative thoughts.
And so I thought to myself, okay, they let us go for a break. And I'm like, I have to go to the bathroom, but I have this Starbucks that I don't.
She didn't want to get roofied.
I didn't want to
because that's high potential at a personal development conference. Roofing is real, everybody.
I was like, I don't want to put this down. And I have to go to the bathroom. And I thought to myself, Alex, you can do anything.
You can put your mind to it.
Yeah. And so I went into that bathroom.
Yeah, you did.
I went into that stall and I said, Alex, you can take.
There might not be a perfect ledge on that toilet
there
paper.
There may be nowhere but you can go to the bathroom.
You can pee.
Yes.
Without spilling your Starbucks or putting it on the floor because that's gross.
Because that's gross. And man, did it happen. And I thought to myself, I don't know why that was such a pivotal moment, but I was like,
she came back and told me about it.
I was like, I can do anything.
Yeah. If I can
take down my pants with one hand, I can do anything.
That's all it takes for Alex, everybody. That's all it takes.
Honestly. And my life was changed from that point. So let's fast forward.
That's amazing. That's all it took.
We are okay. So you've made your initial investment. You said it was like 3,000 or 5,000. now we're going into like 2014 where you're like all in. You're like,
yeah,
I want to talk to me about that.
I, at that point, had not just invested in the first course, but what they do is I was taught, what's crazy about it too, is I'm taught how to sell. And they're selling to me the way that I'm taught how to sell. And yet I can't see it from the outside that they are doing to me what I'm being taught to do to others. It just like wasn't computing. But when I became a heart-to-heart certified coach, you're taught to like make lists of people, those who are going to buy from you easily, that, you know, if you have easy access to. And so those were like friends and family for me. That was like you and mom and like different friends that I thought would find value from this thing because I was about to change their life by inviting them to invest in this course. And they, you know, encourage you to give a discounted price. So I charged like wholesale price, which it's not what I said to you guys because the reality, but for me, it was a very real situation because when I would make money, when someone would invest in coaching with me, I owed the company a portion of that money. So for every client I signed, I had to pay them $500 for access to the materials to teach what they taught me to teach.
Okay.
And so I signed my early clients at $500. So where inside that coaching community, it was unbelievable to people that I was even selling, right? And that made me an immediate success that I had cohorts of people joining. The perception immediately became, and I learned very quickly through their training on how to give testimonials on their stages, I wasn't allowed to talk about the fact that not only was every success I was getting going right back to their pocket, I still owed them money for the other coaching programs I had been invited to invest in. Wow. So I was always behind with them.
Right.
No matter
how could you not be?
How could you not be? So everybody who signed up with me, and it was framed to me like you'll charge more with every cohort. So then like the next cohort that I did, like the next group of clients that I would sign, I would charge a little bit more. Now, mind you, at that point, so this is still like the 2013, in that very first year, I invested probably in 3 courses, definitely in 2, but I just don't remember where the third fell. And so the first one allowed me to coach with this set of materials that they taught me. Then the next one was like, it was called the accelerator package, where you really learned how to teach it. And it was always like
a level up,
a carrot that they would dangle in front of you and be like, if you invest in the next level, then you get more access to the cult leader, because you don't get access to the cult leader.
Okay.
Like you don't get one-on-one time with her.
Okay.
And she's not on calls. It's the people who work for her, which are her family members. It's her children.
Right.
That's who's on these calls coaching you. So every time I would get 75% of the way through a program, they would sell me another. Typically at a live event, those of us who were highly invested, showing signs of success, and who had paid our bills to them on time every time, because that's how you're taught. You want to pay on time every time and typically in full.
Yep.
And the way you do it is the way your clients will do it. So it's framed to you like you should do it for us, because then other people will do it for you. Yep. That's not the real world. That's not how it happens to everyone's in the same financial position. But
net 120.
That's fine. That's fine. So, I would pay on time every time and in full typically, so that I would never owe them money. And so 75% of the way through my first course, I was sold my second, which is an accelerator package, which was this carrot dangling, like you'll get access to her, this cult leader, more, which of course I really wanted, because everyone treats her like God. Like what she says is the best thing that's ever existed. Everyone who goes and stands on the stage is about how when you get one-on-one time with her, your life changes and all these things. So of course I want to invest, because I'm seeing success. I'm getting love bombed that I'm one of their more successful people. So I'm like, oh my God, then what they're saying must be true. I must be really close to making money.
Can I ask a question about this? Do you feel like they went through some sort of psychological training to be able to be smart enough and know? Because that is how a lot of cults are led. I mean, it's the same story again. Do you think that they are smart enough to know the psychological things that they're doing to you? Or do you think that's just toxic traits that they've been doing their whole life and they've benefited from it?
Well, the unfortunate reality is that most cult leaders, it was done to them. So it's very much like any kind of abuse.
Right.
it's repeated. So like I knew who my cult leader was. Like it's like a part of the conversation. Like I knew who she, was studying with, and, she was like this privileged one who got access to this person that, was kind of like, if there was a God and a Jesus, he was God and she was Jesus. Like,
okay.
So I think, coaching schools, MLMs, people like that legitimately think they're helping.
Wow.
I don't think it has anything to do with training. I don't think it has anything to do. I think there are some people, don't get me wrong, I don't think it's about psychological training. I think it's about psychological issues that cause them to believe that what they're doing is helping and it's actually harming people. But in this particular case, I legitimately still think that they still think they're helping people.
Wow.
And no matter, you can't tell them otherwise, because you have to remember they're living in this high vibration where you're not allowed to talk about negative things.
Right.
Like
exactly,
that's a very real thing. So you can't come to them and express like your concerns. Like you immediately get shunned from the group and cut out because you're just like a negative and toxic person for the group. And you're one bad apple.
Let's talk
the
about
rest
that.
Of
So how much are you invested in right now at this point in the timeline?
So the biggest course, I'm pretty sure at that point, like the first course I invested in was like that $3,000 to $5,000. The next course I invested in, like the accelerated course, was like $6,000 to $10,000. Those when I had paid in full and, just like done and over with. I started to get on like payment plans by the third course coming around, and that was about a $25,000 course. Now, these are like stacking on top of each other. It's not like I'm like in one course at a time.
Right.
I'm in many courses at one time. And it was when I was in that $25,000 level, I'm pretty sure that was all still in my first year. If it wasn't, it was like a year and a half in. The really big one, and where I think cracks started to show financially and where I started to struggle financially, because another important part of this story is I was engaged and then married to someone who was in sales, who made a significant amount of money and had about $100,000 in savings when we moved to Los Angeles. I was investing in the coaching world and in what I now know was a cult. We were living on someone else's dollar because the person he worked for was paying our rent. So I didn't have to pay rent. And so we were getting married. I was investing in coaching and someone else was paying our rent. But his savings at the same time was going from 100,000 to the next month it would be 90, to the next month it would be 80, to the next month it was 70. Like it was very clearly we were blowing through that money, but I had the money. And so, the $3,000 to $5,000 investment wasn't that big of a deal. And then the $6,000 to $10,000 investment wasn't that big of a deal. And then we got married and we paid the bill for our wedding. And so then it started to like feel pressure. And that's when I started to get on payment plans, because I was like, okay, I can't pay in full anymore. Like I got to make this money.
Yeah.
But the reality was, even on a payment plan, because in my mind, and again, this is the indoctrination, right? Like eventually I'll start making money has been sold to me at this point. Well, now I'm making money. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, and now as I'm making it, I can use that money to pay back what I owe the organization. But the amounts that I was investing always surpassed the amount that I was making as a coach on my own, because I still owed them for every client I was signing. Yeah. I still owed them for the multiple courses I was in. So it was the $25,000 level that was the first time I got on a payment plan where I think cracks started to show. I didn't know that's what it was, but I know like my husband at the time started to be like, I'm uncomfortable here.
Yeah.
Where it became a really big problem, and where I think that I passed that, I got close to $100,000 invested in like a very short period of time, is the next time I was invited. Because the next thing they do is you no longer are just invited to their rooms, like the Heart to Heart Live.
Yeah.
And then sold something on that stage. Then you're invited into, this collection of people that are seeming very successful and are paying their bills on time every time and oftentimes in full. They're invited into this next thing because we're their, special crew, or as the cult leader used to call us, her shining stars. We were her shining stars. And she would give us one-on-one times for those sales, just so you know.
Oh, wow.
The only time I got one-on-one times with her is when I was invited into the next high level. And so I was her shining star, one of her shining stars. I would be invited to the next. So the next thing they would do is, once everything that they offered was bought into by those shining stars or by the people that they had access to, they would then collaborate with other cult leaders across the country. They would host an event where they were one speaker among 5, and then they would sell group coaching packages to those of us in the room. Those of us in the room, the only ones invited are those who, for all 5 of these people, are their shining stars.
Right.
We're successful. We're paying on time every time and in full. We're, invested and they can tell we're all in on the program. They then come together and say, we're going to cross promote each other and sell you everything we all have to offer. So I spent $40,000 was the biggest investment I made. And it was on a service offered by 3 different people that I was told involved coaching. Guess what I got? An iPod with every course they had ever recorded in their entire careers.
No freaking way. For $40,000?
$40,000. And I was told, so it came with coaching calls, but they never were in those coaching calls. And so, again, this is like 18 months to 2 years into my cult life. So, like, I am all freaking in. Yeah. And there are rules you follow. You wake up at 5 a.m., you get on the phone with another cult follower, and you read back and forth sentences from books you're assigned by them. And they are things like Think and Grow Rich, Science of Getting Rich. You read back and forth at 5 a.m.
all the universal laws.
Now, keep in mind, I'm mid-20s with no children, no responsibilities, blowing my husband's money on a coaching cult. Yeah. Why am I waking up at 5 a.m.? That is the dumbest shit I've ever heard. Now looking back, I'm like, dude,
ambitious.
I had so much time to rest and relax, and I was blowing it on reading Think and Grow Rich back and forth with Katie from, Long Island or some shit like that. It's so dumb. But that's what you're taught to do. So I got an iPod, and it was, I still have it to this day. It has everything they've ever recorded and ever taught, because most of what they had taught were on VHS tapes and DVDs and CDs. So they transitioned all that material to iPods, and they could put everything they'd ever taught. And you're told, you wake up at 5 and you read back and forth a book, and then you put the iPods in. So if you're not teaching or on a coaching call, you're listening, because the term that's used is a paradigm shift.
Yep.
You need a paradigm shift. And the only way you can shift your paradigm is the circumstance you find yourself living in, the mindset you find yourself thinking in. It is your current reality. Your current reality is a paradigm. This is your normal.
Yep.
And I need to change that.
Yep.
In order to change that, I have to combat the paradigm that I've been raised with. I have to combat all these years, and I have to unlearn everything I've learned. And I can't do that if I'm spending most of my time in that world that is my old paradigm. I have to invest time and money and shifting my paradigm.
Right.
And so I'm doing that. I had bruises in my ears after that course investment, because that was the one that I came back. It was the first one I didn't tell my husband about.
Really?
Next set of indoctrination is in sales conversations, where you bring up, so sales conversations are never sold, or they're never talked about like they are going to be a sales conversation. It's kind of presented like there's no harm in us talking about it. There's no harm in us talking about the possibility. Okay. You could say no by the end. But then their training comes in. So that very question that's very positive for Michigan Tribe now, this is where it became toxic, was around that $40,000 investment level. When I said, I don't feel comfortable with that, my husband has expressed some sincere interest or some sincere concerns about my investments and maybe this group and the possibility that I need to slow down on my financial investments and maybe make some of this back, blah, blah, blah. And they'll be like, there's no harm in us talking about it. So you know what? Let's get out our pad of paper and let's just write down the question. What can you do with what you do have?
Everybody knows that.
From right where you are. So that's when that question became toxic. So like I said, you can go to a one-time conference and learn these things, and they can be harmless. Like that's why for me, Michigan Tribe, like that's not a harmful question. No. We can make it harmful as people. We can use that to essentially, at that point, they'd learned so much about my life. They knew everything. What can you do with what you do have? Yeah, you could use that savings account you and your husband share. You've used that before. What else could you do? And this is also where they introduce the possibility in very harmless ways that you could get a credit card, take a loan, utilize money, go to high interest loan locations.
Take your 401k out.
Yep. And this is where they introduce, like, oh, okay, that's a possibility. Is there a response when you throw something out there that like you would never do, you would never think about ever, 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 ever? But they've just encouraged you to like, just put it on the list. Everybody who, who's listening to this, if you've been to a Michigan Tribe, I say there are rules to masterminding. Mm-hmm. There are no bad ideas.
Right.
So if you have a big 401k, which a lot of people did, they'd put it on the list. There's no harm in putting it on the list, right?
Right.
Well, then they ask the question, which one of those sparks for you? Okay. Well, which one sparks is really reliant on how much energy you have, how much fear you have, how much anxiety you have, how much tension you have about certain line items. So that's not intuition anymore.
Right.
That's like, that becomes a harmful question and identification. So what I could have done with what I did have from right where I was make the investment on a credit card that I had just opened for my business if I ever needed it, not tell my husband, and figure out a way to pay for it within 30 days.
Is that what you did?
That's what I did.
Wow.
I felt so much guilt that I left and told him. Don't get me wrong. Like, I left and told him. And it was devastating for him to the extent that I also think it was pretty devastating to our relationship, because I think at that time he knew. I think he knew it was cultish. And there's a whole other story about it. I think there were a lot of partners who knew it was cultish, but we had been trained how to deal with those conversations.
Right.
We had been trained in many ways that when you leave events and you go back home, their vibration is going to be very different from what you've just left from, because you have a bubble, right? So you're kind of taught to expand that bubble, that you want to stay in this room, you want to stay around these people, you want to stay in this content, you want to stay here. The moment you go home, you're going to crash and burn with people. Just remember, they're living in a low vibration. They're living in a vibration of lack.
Yeah.
You can be in it, you cannot hear it, you cannot think about it, and then run back as fast as you can to the people who get you, is kind of how it's framed.
Right.
So you're never really allowed to spend all that much time with people who are doubting that what you've just done was a very wise decision for your life. You're never really allowed to talk about it. So that's kind of like the early stages of when I started to isolate from the people who would have an altering opinion.
Okay.
You know, and where it kind of took a toxic turn for how much I shared publicly, and really where my life on social media and in blogging and in conversations with the people that I loved really turned, and the people in like friends, right? Like, I lived in Los Angeles, the place that was really glamorous. So it became a place where I no longer got to be myself, because I now, number one, am told everyone else is living in lack. So unless they're willing to talk with you about the things that the common language you've now learned and the paradigm you've decided you want to shift into, unless they're willing to talk about those things, that's called lack. That's called fear. Yeah. And so let's not talk to them. Let's not hang out with them. It's really detrimental to your success and your ability. Yeah. And so, you know, I really just stopped. I think I just really isolated from people who would have an altering opinion, and just found it really important to perform. Yeah. Really, really important to perform.
Well, I feel like, what was the year? I mean, I don't know if we've gotten there yet, or maybe we're just on the cusp of it, but you start a business.
Yeah. Oh, I started that in 2013.
Okay. So you start the business in 2013. You hire me.
That I think happened in 2015, 2014, something like that. Yeah. Yeah. You weren't immediate. You were once it grew. Yeah. Once it grew.
So you started a coaching business. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you want to say the name of that business, but
it's trademarked now by somebody else, because I didn't catch it within 6 months, so we're not going to go.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Everybody, if you have a trademark, get on it. Make sure you're watching it. Use a lawyer.
So I come on board. Yeah. You've made this huge investment. You hire me. Yeah. I quit a full-time job as well. Yeah. Because I'm also invested in your coaching business. I had also just gotten married. Actually, I got married, went through it with you as my coach. The year before me. Yeah. Yes. And then you hired me on part-time to help you with like the operations, the admin side, all of that.
Literally the life part. Like, if you want to know what Alex did for me, it's the same thing she does for your Michigan tribe. She makes sure this shit's moving forward. That's what she did.
But how long did we do that for? I mean, was that... I can't remember.
Closed down the business. My last cohort of so the way the business evolved is I started coaching in groups. So I started with like group cohorts. That's the way you're taught to do it. You're taught to present to churches, to Lions clubs, to Rotary clubs, to anyone you can. Present this speech they tell you. Invite people into a private workshop where they learn more, kind of like the heart-to-heart live event. And then from there, you invite them to invest in a group coaching experience. And 75% of the way through group coaching, you invite them to invest in one-on-one coaching. So that was the flow that I had taken. So I now had, in 2013, I started my first groups. Probably by the end of 2013, I had individual coaching
And then
clients.
that's what I was helping you with, because what you were doing was obviously I was helping you build email campaigns. We had planned an event in San Francisco with a group.
Well, you came on. So by the time I had one-on-one clients, I really was at the point where, like, had I not had overwhelming amounts of debt to this cult organization, I would have been making $90,000 a year, which wasn't like a ton of money, but for a young 20 something, starting a life coaching business, like, it was significant. But I'm owing all that back to the organization and more. So I really wasn't making anything. And then, so I knew at that time, looking at the success I was experiencing, I needed help. And we built that into an online school.
That's right. Yes.
Which is when you came on board. Because I wanted what was called an evergreen program, which is where I got to be the cult leader. I no longer had to talk to them.
Right.
And I put everything on videos and put everything in workbooks that asked the dumbest questions and designed some program that helped everyone change their lives. But now looking back, it's like I was like 23 designing this life-changing program.
Yeah, but I will say, I mean, the business was helping 20 and 30-something women build and grow a business. And when we started working together, we were working remote because you were still in California and I was in Michigan.
Yeah.
And during that time is when you and your then husband got separated, divorced.
Yeah. So I went from, everything is amazing and in so many ways. So the other part that's important in the doctrination process is anytime there's a success in your life, you're taught to attribute the success to the cult. And so whenever there was like a major success, I would be invited on stage at live events to talk about that success, because then they can attach their cult to the success you're experiencing. For me, that wasn't separated between myself and my husband. So any success he experienced, if I brought it up on coaching calls, they documented and then taught me how to talk about on stage. So like the whole community knew that I was, married to this person who was finding some success as an actor.
Right.
And that meant that when I got a phone call, because he was filming something, on the East Coast, I was still living on the West Coast and I was going back and forth. When I got a phone call and he was like, by the way, I'm getting divorced, like, bye.
Totally
my life
out of the blue.
Out of the blue. And it was not, it was a terrible experience. And the year that followed was especially terrible. But that moment became a bizarre moment in my cult experience because everyone knew that happened, but everyone had attributed his success to our cult life and the things I had taught him and the things that I had brought around him. But now when I would go to the cult calls and events and things like that, and I would bring up that my life was falling apart, that was lack and fear. So I wasn't allowed to talk about it. And so it was a weird unraveling.
Yeah.
That it was a very weird, bizarre unraveling time where there started to be cracks for me where I got disassociated from the group from the cult in a very, very big way, because I was talking in fear and I was talking in lack and I wasn't really welcome to the tables. And at the same time, like, I needed to process what was going on in my life because I just got married and someone suddenly, left me.
And you were moving back to Michigan, too.
And he was using the language that I had learned in the cult that I had told him, taught him. He was using that against me to say why he was divorcing me. And so it was just like, it was this really twisted process where I really began to isolate now even from the cult.
Yeah.
But I was still expected to perform because I was one of their highest performers.
Right.
And so we started, the online school for entrepreneurs. And, I still had to pretend. And if you looked on social media, it's probably still there. Like my whole story, like I packed up a backpack and traveled the world and lived this life that anyone would envy. And everyone got to watch that play out on social media, and their perception was this girl's killing it.
Right.
And I was not killing it. Like I was not even remotely.
Yeah, that time was really difficult. You had moved back to Michigan. You were living with me at that time. I mean, you were traveling abroad for a majority of that time. You decided you wanted to close the business, the virtual school.
So I think my last cohort, I traveled and had cohorts going the whole time and one-on-one clients. So by the end of this, I was charging people $25,000 a year to coach with me.
Wow.
And I had 4 or more clients at all times. But mind you, 4 or more clients at all times that I would owe an affiliate fee to my organization too, because they were the ones who in some way, shape or form, it was always like, because of them, I got the client.
Yeah.
And so I owed them an affiliate fee for it. And these are all people like me. They're heavily invested in cults that aren't working for them. And their safety systems, like mine was my ex-husband's savings account. Yeah. I didn't know that was my safety net when I was in it. But once that was gone, I couldn't pay for the cult anymore.
Right.
I owed them money and I couldn't pay their dues.
Right. So
it was a huge problem.
Yeah, what happened?
Well, so first of all, one of the ways I tried to pay their dues was having clients still. Well, those clients' cards didn't often go through. Because they were in situations like me. So now I'm coaching people and still having to show up for calls of people that I'm mad at because I can't pay anything. I can't buy a flight to get home. I can't pay anything. Like I just couldn't do anything because their fees aren't coming through. I didn't know at this time yet that I was in a cult. Right. Mind you, I just thought I was in a tough time.
Yes.
You were still working for me.
Yes.
We still had the group coaching calls. People were still investing in the Evergreen program that never had to talk to me. And then one-on-one clients were paying $25,000 a year to just speak with me twice a month for 15 minutes. I mean, it's like insane what you're taught to do and design for people and really screw people. But I moved back. Not thinking I'd move back. If you remember, I was like, I'm living in Australia forever.
Yes,
goodbye.
I do remember that. I do.
And then I came back to you, and then I saw this giant stack of bills I had been avoiding for like a year. And we sat down one night and we were watching
we were having
Leah
wine.
Remini's Scientology series.
You guys remember that on Netflix?
So we're sitting there, and I'm not in a good place, don't get me wrong, but I still think I'm changing the world.
Yes.
I mean, I have groupies.
We both do.
Yeah, I have groupies who are like, every word out of my mouth, they think is the word of God.
I know, but like to pause you for a second though, Amanda. Again, another positive thing out of this was that they did teach you how to speak so well. Yeah. I mean, you can get up on a stage, you can deliver a message.
I've always been a natural,
amazing.
But it's fine.
Yeah. So
I had a lot of
I wouldn't
experience.
say that you're groupies. It's because of the cult. I think it's because of you and the way that you speak about it. Because I think my tribers can
for it.
also.
But again, I want to point out, I learned how to coach from another school.
Right.
A legitimate coaching school that I got out of. Because number one, the exact style of the parent coaching was not necessarily for me and not what I was natural at. But I also got out of it because you want to know what no one there was doing? Making a dime coaching. Right. There was no hope for me there.
Yeah.
I didn't look at them and envy anything they were doing. The leader of that group admitted that this is not a money-making game. I did not want that world. Yeah. So yes, I can speak. Yes, I was good at it. But the cult attributed that to their training. And that was the wrong thing to attribute it to. That was my skill, my charisma, and coaching school not related to them. Yeah. And it was the speaking opportunities they gave me that other people in the cult didn't get. I got it because I was a shining star. Right. You know what I mean? Like, and they trained me. I had behind the scenes training. You're allowed to say certain things on their stage and not on others. And so I got a lot of training from them that other people didn't get. So yes, I absolutely had some great things happen, but I was sitting at your house one night.
Yes, we were drinking wine
and watching Leah Remini's The Aftermath. Yes. And the first episode comes on and we watch it. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure we like side-eyed each other, but inside my head was like, if you say a goddamn word, don't say it. Don't say it. Don't say it, Alex. Yeah. And then we didn't say it.
No, we didn't. We watched actually.
And then the next episode came on and I was like, I swear to God, if she says anything, I will murder her on the spot. Yes. All of my years of preparation to murder you will end tonight. And then like the third episode came on. And I don't remember which one of us said it, but we looked at each other and we were like, I think we're running a cult. Like that was our first introduction.
But why did you think it? I know why I thought it. Why did you think it?
Well, the indoctrination process was insanely similar. Yeah. And so there for me were a lot of like highlights about how someone gets you invested. Okay. And that was probably the big thing. I don't honestly remember what was in those episodes. I should probably rewatch them.
God, that was such a good documentary. Leah did so good on that.
I know. And she the indoctrination process, I was literally like, oh my God, this is what I'm doing to people. This is what I'm doing to people. This was done to me, but that was my big concern at that time and still is the thing that pains me to this day. I was doing that to the people in my coaching.
Yeah, because you were currently still coaching people.
Yeah, I was doing it.
One of the things that I thought when I watched it and I thought it was the leveling up of the books.
Yeah.
You have to, in order to level up to the books, you have to pay a certain amount in order to level up.
And I started doing that.
Yeah,
Just as I'm saying, we had the Evergreen program that you invested in at $1,000. From there, if you wanted the group coaching experience, you had to pay $1,997. There's a reason for every dollar you spend, and there's a way that you say that amount. After you were done with that, you were invited into the next level, which was a more in-depth 6-month coaching experience that was like an accelerated package for people who had started a business and were making money. And that was like around $5,000 or $6,000. And then from that, you were invited into one-on-one coaching with me for $25,000. You had, every time you were in a course, 75% of the way through, you were sold the next thing.
Well, and I think about like the abuse, the Scientology abuse that they use. I mean, obviously the heart to heart, we don't, I mean, the ins and outs, but I don't think that they were doing, similar things like Scientology was as far as abuse, but financial abuse.
Yeah.
Like when you couldn't pay back your money, they were like,
yeah, they were all over me.
I
just about got sued.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do want to give credit to one person that I had an angel on my side. So her name is actually Kathy. Kathy was the CFO of the organization at the time. And I owed, I remember after the $40,000 course, I know I invested in like a $10,000 one. And then I think there might've been a $25,000 one that I also invested in. And I still owed money from the $40,000 one. And there might've been more. Honestly, at this point, I don't remember that whole jumble. I just know I spent just over $100,000 in my total investments.
$100,000.
Yeah. $100,000 is what I paid them in a 2.5 year period. As a young 20-something making no money. And that's not including affiliate fees. That's like course fees. That's what I paid them.
Wow.
So I know that I owed a lot. And there was a pause to my payback that I asked for during the divorce finalization because I just didn't know if I was going to use a lawyer. I didn't know what our financial situation was like. I didn't know the way that California worked. It really put me in a bad situation where like the moment he said it out loud, basically we legally we're allowed to separate finances. And as previously mentioned, I had no money. It was like when I realized there was a problem for me and I didn't realize how much I was relying on. It was just like a space of ignorance for me. And so,
well, you don't think that your ex-husband is going to do what he does. You know what I'm saying? So.
Yeah. So I owed a lot. And I couldn't pay. And I had asked for time to figure that out. And, that time had passed and I was getting some aggressive, collection emails and phone calls from the organization and then from the people they hired to collect on it. And at this point, I'm disassociated from the group. They're not allowed to speak to me. The people in the group are not allowed to speak to me.
Now, can we talk about that for a minute? Is that because you decided you were going to stop coaching? Or why did they decide?
Oh, I was still coaching.
Why did they decide to not do that? Is it because you were coming from a place of lack and you were never negative talking?
Yeah. So I went to my final heart-to-heart event. It was in Texas in 2015, I want to say, the end of 2015. I was still coaching full time. And I definitely there were a lot of cracks in my relationship with the cult. I didn't know yet it was a cult, but it was where, again, I was like going through this personal stuff they didn't want to talk to me about. And I was like, that's weird because you guys have framed yourselves as my only friends and the people I need to be with. And this is like the hardest thing I likely will ever go through. And like, I'm not well. And so I went to that event and there were two things I wanted to do. The first one was see Kathy because just the week prior to that event they were aggressively coming after me for what I owed. And I got a phone call from her. And she said, I can't remember if she got to do this every month, every quarter, or every year. That part I don't remember. But she did tell me she got to present to the executive team people she felt should be forgiven their debts to the organization.
Oh, okay.
And they got to approve or deny them. But my name was one of the ones she brought to the table. And I didn't know Kathy that well, but she had been I'd always said hi to her and talked with her. And she had always been, at this point in 2015, I've been in the group for a couple of years. And every leader that wasn't a family member had left at that point.
Oh, okay.
New ones had come in, don't get me wrong. But non-family member leaders had been leaving. And when I would try to connect with them, it was always a very awkward, they clearly were not open to talking about their time in the group. And I always found that very weird because, again, I'm still in this process of like, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. And I figured they just left to like go to another group or it was just time to take another job. And it clearly was not that. So Kathy and I had a similar relationship, right? Like she's the CFO. She's not necessarily a leader. I just said hi to her, but I had talked with her a little bit at a couple of events about the fact that my husband had left me. And she gave me hugs. She had been through a divorce. She was a mom and she was very sweet. And so her doing that for me, I don't know what compelled her to do it or why she knew I needed the help. But she didn't have to do that. And they could have come after me for a lot of money. I mean, I'd signed a lot of paperwork agreeing to those terms. And
Right.
And she got my debt to them completely removed. I mean, I wept. I
do remember this. Yeah.
And I went to the Texas event to give her a hug because I was going to not go. My experience with them had gotten pretty bad at that point. I was not going to go. So I went to give her a hug and I went to see some of my friends. I mean, I still considered these people friends, even though they had really stopped talking to me. And so it definitely was different, right? Like everyone's dancing. I wasn't welcome to sit with the Shining Star group. I had to sit in the back, in the non-VIP section. And
non-VIP.
So I'm like dancing and I'm definitely not at the same level, but I'm also experiencing massive physical issues. If you remember, chronic stress had taken over my body and I was having some major physical issues. So I had migraines. I was throwing up a lot. I was just not well. And I was there anyways. And, so I was in the back, I'm like kind of dancing. And when we break for lunch, my friend group, I was like, hey, I'm going to come with you. And so I went and I sat down at lunch with them and they were speaking as if it were 3 years from now, the very thing that we're supposed to do. And it came to me, right? You're supposed to go around the table and you're supposed to say, I'm so happy and grateful now that, and you're supposed to say what is going on in your life. I didn't have anything to say. It wasn't necessarily that I was trying to be a Debbie Downer. It wasn't that I was trying to pull the group down. I just legitimately like my dream just died. Like I've been working for 2 or 3 years on the same dream that I could bring to this conversation and it just crumbled. And if I said what I wanted right now, it would be that, but I don't have access to it. It was a very complicated time for me. And so I just said, I don't know what I'm happy and grateful about 3 years from now. Like I was just very vulnerable. And the guy next to me who was one of my friends at the time, he was an older gentleman, probably like in his 50s. He was, this was an early retirement job for him. So he had been to something else. He had retired and was doing this. And he said, well, when you're willing to come back with a higher vibration, you can sit at this table. But until then, there's an empty table right over there.
No.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I went and sat by myself at the empty table. And
if I was there, that would not go over well.
Yeah, that's when I knew I don't think I'm welcomed here anymore. So yeah, I was really disassociated with the group. They stopped talking to me. I mean, there's a couple people here and there I'd like text and just be like, how are you? What's going on? And it was a very bizarre check-in process when I would do that for like the next year. Because again, that was like 2015. I had another year of I was still running a business and I still had a cohort. My last cohort was in 2016. That I brought to a close because 2017, March of 2017 was the first time a Michigan Tribe group, before we ever called it that, before it was ever official organization, when we got together, like I still coached for a whole other year and I'd check in with people and they were just very like, they were telling the same stories. And I just thought that was odd for the first time. Like,
It's like you had been removed and you were looking at yourself from like a 30,000 foot view.
And I was like, wow, they keep talking about this dream. It's 3 years later. I was like, it is 3 years later. You're still telling 3 years from now this is happening. I'm like, does that timeline ever?
Well, let's fast forward to that time in March of 2017. Talk to me a little bit. I know we don't want to go too much probably, but I want to know like kind of the beginnings of Michigan Tribe. Like before it was Michigan Tribe. Talk to me about that.
So there is a girl in town who knew that I was a life coach and a business coach.
How did she know that?
I think because I lived here for a year as one.
Oh, okay.
Remember?
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so she asked me to actually, you know how she knew it? Now I remember. My groupies on the East Coast
Oh, yeah.
were flying me out to do an event.
That's
And
right.
I was saying to them, like, I am not a coach anymore. Like, I can't do this. But I was still kind of like going back and forth about it. And it was a source of money and it was crazy. So they were flying me out to do an event. And that girl and I had met, we were friends, and she was like, I want to come. And then it didn't work for her to come. And she was like, do one here. And I was like,
now.
never.
Yes, you're like, no.
I was like, I am closing this business down. Why is no one listening to me? Can I just come over and sit on the couch and talk business? As a person closing a business, can I just like,
Yeah.
and that was our first meeting. We met in her living room. There were like 5 of us, and we, talked about all the businesses and dreams we had. And I talked about some of the principles, and they wanted me to keep going, but I was very hesitant and was very much like, I just kept coming back to, what are you working on? Like, what can we do to help? What can we do with the questions? What can you do with what you do have? Like, what can we do with that? And that was really, we did that every month for a year.
Every month for a year.
Yeah. And then
you were like the Lean Rocket Lab mobile before the Lean Rocket Lab was a thing.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah. And that was right. Right at the tail end, I was closing my business officially when Michigan Tribe, we didn't know it was called Michigan Tribe.
Right.
The groupies on the East Coast called themselves Boston Tribe.
Ah.
That was what they called themselves. So when we did this group, we're sitting at couches, we're drinking wine, we're having cheese, and a couple other people get invited into the group. That group comes to me and says, like, we need to invite more women to the table. Lean Rocket Lab is kind of opening its doors at that time. So if you're not familiar with Lean Rocket Lab and you're a listener, like, please check it out, particularly if you're in Jackson. But if you're not in Jackson, Michigan, check out some of the businesses that they're helping across the world to ensure that manufacturing and high-tech manufacturing and technology continue and bring business to Jackson, Michigan.
Thank you so much for that plug.
You're so welcome. And I think I can get my sister employed because, as mentioned, I once tried to do that and made her a cult leader.
So what month was that?
so-
What month? That was February of 2019 that you had.
The first public meeting.
Yeah.
So when she took me to Brandon, before the doors were like really open and anyone had rented space, she, talked to Brandon about it. He said, well, what do you call yourselves? And I said, I have no idea. I said, the group in Boston, because they were still groupies at that time, call themselves Boston Tribe. So let's just call it Michigan Tribe until we know what else.
Until we can figure out a name.
Here we are.
Stop it.
Yeah.
It. And then you guys had planned. Now you did this with 4 or 5 other
I can't
women
remember.
in
Yeah.
Jackson. You had the first meetup that I attended.
Yeah, as an attendee.
Really honestly to support you because I know how anxiety inducing it was.
I had panic attacks.
You did.
Because I was terrified that I was about to start another cult and that people were
I
going to treat
remember
me
that.
as a cult leader.
Yeah. And it was definitely physically present on you. I could tell that you had a lot of anxiety. So I was really there as a support system, but I also wanted to start this photography business. And we had the meeting and it was great. And we asked the questions, what are you working on and what can we do to help? We did the breakout mastermind, or you did. And then they wanted more.
Yep.
So tell me, like,
that was it. We just asked, do you guys want to do this again? And people said yes. We had sold tickets to the first event. And I think just whether it was through Eventbrite or PayPal or something like that. And the money just sat there because I didn't know what to do with it. I had extreme anxiety. I had a panic attack for 3 days leading up to the event itself. And so there was a part of me that knew I could not accept that money. Like, it was so uncomfortable for me, the possibility that it was evolving into what it was before. So I let it sit there. And I just asked everybody, do you want to do this again? They said yes. So we had a couple more events with that original crew. But at that time is when I asked you to join the team.
Yeah.
From a financial perspective, we needed that kind of arm.
Yeah.
And that eventually evolved to just you and I being leaders. But you are the one who said, well, let's take the money we're selling tickets with, save it until we have enough to give back. And we made the commitment at that time we would never make money off Michigan Tribe.
Right.
Like, it is incredibly important to me.
Yes.
That we keep a differentiation between what I have to say is not God's word. Like, it is really, really important that the group mastermind happens. When we ask the question, what can I do with what I do have? I, try to speak very little, and I hope that I offer value, but it's a high anxiety inducing process for me because it came from a world that can be toxic.
Yeah, but look at what we've been able to do because of that, Amanda.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
I think
we've been able to give over $100,000
now I can
away.
joke about it.
Yeah,
I can joke about
now
it,
we
and
can
I'm
laugh
fine.
about it. Now we
And
can
no
laugh
one
about
else
it.
besides my sister is making me dive 30 days into the trauma that was that cult life. I'm fine now. But it was a really deep, dark place. I went into a bad place after that world. I mean, I lost all my friends. I went through a divorce. I had to declare bankruptcy from the financial realities that organization put me through. So there were a lot of things that, I went through because of it. It's ended positive. I'm so glad. But I attribute the reason that our experience is positive now is because we give to people that micro dose of what was possible for us.
Yeah.
And we don't let it go deeper. We don't develop additional cohorts, and there aren't coaching groups, and you don't have to pay escalating costs to get to the next layer. Just freaking come. The most we're going to charge you is $25. And if you don't have the money for it, message us. Right. We could care less. Right. It's just contributing to the grant funds.
Exactly.
Like that distance has been really, really important to keep it a healthy type of professional and personal development.
Yeah. Well, they say everything happens for a reason.
That's a load of crap.
Cheers to that. Cheers to that, everybody. Amanda, thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah. I mean, I feel like it is such an important story to what we have done at Michigan Tribe, what we continue to do. Yeah. Even though there's so much negativity to that story, there's also slivers of positivity that we took and we live with still to this day and that we use.
Yeah.
And that was because of you. And I've said this to you, but thank you for that. Even though we went through hell, look at where we are now, but I have taken a lot of what I learned and still use it today. And I think and I really think it is attributable to where we are in our careers right now.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just share with anybody who feels like maybe they're invested in something that you're listening to and you're like, oh, I have a coach, but it's not included. Yeah. It can be really dangerous. It can be really, really dangerous. Just beware of the next step that people are inviting you into. But more than that, be really just conscious of the difference between your intuition and someone else's guidance. Because I think where it gets really dangerous is where people frame themselves or you frame them as gurus for your business. People whose word means more than yours. Like, especially for the women who are listening, you are good at this business. You do know what you're doing. You can trust your intuition. You might need guidance and you might need help and support, but make sure that at the end of the day, it's you making the decisions for what's right for you.
Absolutely.
And take breaks from the people who maybe are supporting, but maybe supporting beyond a reasonable level of opinion on your business. And also, if people, big red flag, if people aren't willing to be with you in the really deep, dark depths that are entrepreneurship, get rid of them fast because they're dark, man. And they're dark and they should be dark. Yep. Business is hard. Life is hard. It doesn't have to be terrible, and you can have people who support you, but if you are surrounded by coaches or consultants or people who are unwilling to talk with you about what's really happening in your business, bye.
Yeah. Bye, Felicia.
Bye.
Okay. Nice job. You grow, girl. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Talk to me.
Subscribe to wherever you get your podcast so that you can get the next Michigan Tribe podcast when it comes out, and we will see you then. Bye.
Okay.